Welcome back to Shield of Voices. I'm your host, Mitch. Today's episode is one you won't want to miss. Joining us is Brian. I've worked with Brian for my entire career. Even before I started at the local sheriff's office, I've worked with him. He was one of my mentors. He trained me. Uh, we share a lot of common trauma together. We've been through a lot. I've always enjoyed working with him. I think he has over 15 years experience,
Yep.
if not more. His experience helping individuals recover from PTSD as well, because I've shared kind of how I felt in my journey through PTSD. He's always been there as a pillar of support for me. Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more.
Hey, yeah, you pretty much nailed it. Yep, I'm Brian. I do work for the local sheriff's office on the West Coast. I started in 2009 as a reserve deputy. Prior to law enforcement, I did 8 years in the Army. I won't get too much into the weeds on what I did with the military, 'cause whatever, it was the 90s. So yeah, man, been a sheriff's deputy on the patrol division, 2009. That's including about a year and a half of reserve deputy time. Fell in love with the career. Fell in love with what we do, and unfortunately, man, as time went on, it just didn't fall in love with me, if that makes sense. I'm a defensive tactics instructor, senior level. I've always loved just the thought of tactics, right? I love teaching. I'm a field training officer. Mitch and I together teach emergency vehicle operations known as EVO, which, let's be honest, out of all the stuff that's super cool and combative and high speed, man, driving fast is the best thing we do. I'm sure you would agree.
There's a lot better, yes.
Yeah, so much so. So, yeah, man. And here I am at the tail end of my career, and a lot of things going on.
For sure, yeah. That's kind of why I asked you to be on here today. Is just you and I have been dealing with a bunch of just trauma and bullshit, and like this podcast, we don't cover anything up.
Right.
My last episode, I talked a lot about PTSD, which has been a big impact on my life recently. Being diagnosed with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of curious how trauma or PTSD has shaped your journey into becoming who you are, or what, not necessarily going into the weeds of things, but kind of what you're going through and PTSD specifically.
Yeah, man. Oh, look, first and foremost, I'm an open book. I'll get as deep into the weeds as anybody wants to know. What I can tell you is, for me, um, just for context, I'm in my early 50s, and PTSD has been life-changing for me. It's a pretty scary thing when you realize it at this point in my life, like the impact it's had on me. I will say that I am currently working very hard to salvage the family that I've had for 31 years, including my marriage. And it's because of PTSD, man. I'm not blaming it on somebody else or something else. Like, I own every aspect of it. I will never blame my issues on anything or anyone else. This is something that I have to deal with. But just being aware of it, like you and I have talked for hours, right?
Yeah.
I think that step of just being aware of, like, oh my gosh, like, this is real, and this is the effect that it's having on me, and more importantly, this is the effect it's having on people around me. Because for me, PTSD comes out in fear, and when I get scared, I get angry, and I've been that way for, man, as long as I can remember. I will never forget the day when I turned 17 years old. I enlisted in the United States Army. And it was that day, I'll never forget it, that day I said out loud, nobody will ever hurt me again. And from the time I was 17 till now at 52, I've had decades of building up that wall, right? That what everybody thinks is super cool is this warrior mentality, and it's not. It's horseshit. It's complete horseshit.
Yeah, that
Um,
that that wall I talked about in the last episode, that wall, you can only build it so much to the point where it just overflows.
right, yeah. I can tell you a sergeant that we work with, he came from the jail. He was a lieutenant for a while, had his own issues, voluntarily came back to sergeant, and then went to patrol. He put it to me really clearly a few years ago, probably about 8 or 9 years ago. He's like, look, picture yourself as this cylinder, right? And we're constantly full of this liquid, and it's this liquid, things happen and this liquid kind of trickles out the top to relieve the pressure because of all of the acute traumas that we deal with every single day. And then sometimes that pressure, it's like a volcano, it just explodes. And there's nothing we can do. At least I thought at the time there was nothing I could do to cope, right, or prevent that. I can say about 8 or 9 years ago, I went through an episode due to the career where my wife came home middle of the week, right? Back in those days, we all had shitty days off because we got to start somewhere. But I remember it was a summer day, and man, I'm curled up on the fetal position on my living room floor, sucking my own thumb, metaphorically speaking, but
Right.
literally curled up on the fetal position on my living room floor, and I don't know why. I don't know what's happening. Something's like that overflow happened. And for me, that's kind of where it all, when the awareness all started. But even back in those days, it's like, no, man, you got to ranger up. You got to suck it up.
Even 8 years ago, that's what it was like. It's like, no, you
Yeah.
signed up to do this job, be a man,
Yeah.
move on to the next call. So it's 8
Yeah,
years
right.
ago, you know?
Yeah, we weren't taught any of this that many, like you said, even 8 years ago. This is all still so new in the law enforcement. Well, let's face it, the first responder community. This is all still very, very new. I would say in the last 5 to 6 years, where agencies are actually going, oh shit, like there's an issue here. And I'll give credit to the agency that you and I work for. They've taken some pretty big steps. I think they're still lacking in that, but everybody is, right? It's education. There was just, when I came up, and even when you came up as a cadet, as a young man, you suck it up and drive on. That's it. There's no talking about it.
Yeah, no one talks about their trauma. No one talked about their experiences. I've been fortunate to have certain mentors that understand that this is traumatic. Let's talk about this. But that wasn't everyone. That was, one person that I can remember riding with as a cadet 15 years ago. And, she used to be one of our mental health clinicians. So, yeah, it's definitely changing. Now, do you think that it's changing only because the state is mandating those changes? Or do you think that the agency actually cares?
Wow. Look, I said at the beginning of this that I'm an open book, and I am. I want to say yes. And yes to the fact that when I refer to the agency, that's an entity. It's not one person, right? I think there are people in command structure in our agency that absolutely care. However, at what cost? They're not going to sacrifice themselves. They're not going to do the right thing and stand the line, even if they care and it's the right thing to do. So on the flip side of that, the answer is no. I think the agency is an entity, and people within it don't give a flying fuck about any of us on the front lines doing the job. When it comes down to push comes to shove, right? Like if you or I are dealing with some traumas, which you and I both do.
Yep.
Not to mention everybody we work with, right? Let's be honest. Let's be real about it. Push comes to shove, and it comes down to perception. The agency that we work for, and I would say almost any agency, in my experience, they're going to hang you out to dry. And I say that because I've lived it, and I am living it. You're living it too. Let's be real.
Yeah, most recent events, sure.
Now, look, I think our agency's taking care of things, but push comes to shove, they're going to take care of themselves. When it comes right down to it, you don't mean shit. They're going to hang you out. They're going to hang you out. Me, you, anybody. They talk a big game. And I think you're right in saying that the state mandates have controlled a lot of things, which are good, right? But agencies are going to, they're still going to manage their own narrative so that they look like the golden child in everything, no matter what. Because what we do for work is ugly. It just is. There's nothing pretty about it. There's the pretty news stories, right? The news stories that have been done about me. They're pretty. They're awesome. They make police look good. It's not like the things that the news stories are on me on. It's not like it had nothing to do with the job. It's just who I am.
But it's us being humans.
Exactly, right? It's who we are. It's why we do this job. But it's a prime example of the agency we work for gloms onto that and wants to do news stories about it, not to give me a pat on the back, but it's to make the agency look good. And I didn't realize that at the time. I really didn't. And I looking back on it, it's like, man, you don't give a shit about me. You did that to make the agency look good. Not that I need to be made to look good by any means. I didn't even want to be on the damn news. But it happens. I don't know if that answered your question, really.
No,
But
it does. Yeah.
yeah,
What do you think the defining moment was, or particular event that changed your life to make you feel this way? Because when we first started, it was fun. I mean,
yeah.
we kicked ass. We took names. Uh, minus recent events in 2020. Do you think that's kind of what kicked it off, or do you think there's more
Yeah.
to it?
I won't even say like for where we work in my experience. Yeah. Look. The George Floyd incident had a lot to do with policing across the country. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you agree with what happened or don't agree with what happened. Like I don't even want to get into those weeds, but I think it caused this cultural shift, and that cultural shift then caused certain elected officials to come into office. And I can say for the area that we work, right, certain county commissioners come into office, and that changes everything for us. For me, in where you and I work, that was the defining moment in the cultural shift within our agency, is when certain chair commissioners were elected. Because let's face it, right? The DA and the sheriff are the law of the land, but the commissioners control the money. So that's where the shift happened, and we know that those commissioners were very outspoken about defunding the police and shrinking down patrol divisions within our agency,
Yeah,
which then causes this morale shift, right?
I can acknowledge that. On top of also, seeing what happened during the George Floyd incident and issues with liability,
Sure.
um, making a split-second decision
Oh man.
is ending our career. So a
Yeah,
lot of us got scared of making those decisions, or
you bet.
hesitant on acting, or uh, because we don't want to lose our families. We don't want to lose the roof over our head because of a
Hmm.
split-second decision we made based off of one person on the East Coast.
Right, right. And look, like you and I both know, and maybe others that are in law enforcement that listen to this too. Yeah, case law protects us from that, right? That split second decision. There's case law about that, but man, that's changing. And I agree. Like I am a use of force instructor. I teach defensive tactics, right? You and I both teach firearms and evac, like all the survival skills, and it's like all this hoorah crap. But the fact of the matter is, it's scary because the agency is not going to stand behind us when we make that split second decision, even if it's right. And like I said earlier, the job we do to the public is ugly. It's gross. And it is. Violence is ugly. And I want to be very clear that we don't go out looking for violence, man. It's the last thing we want. It's the last thing we want. But when violence happens, it's not fun and it's ugly and it doesn't look pretty. And when it doesn't look pretty, the agency has a perception, right, that they have to protect. And that's all they care about. And you and I both know from, a few years ago, a coworker that got hung out to dry because violence is ugly. Hung out to dry, and I mean hung out to dry, like cast aside by the agency that he was devoted to. And that was a major shift in who we work for. And to be quite honest, when you got cops out there that are scared to do their job, well, you don't have cops, right?
Yeah, he got judged by 12, and that was the height of, once again, George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone hated cops, and their opinions, just based off of you wearing a uniform, is what ultimately ended his careers, because They didn't like cops at the time. It's a profession that's just so unpredictable, and we deal with so much bullshit,
And
and
at
we
what
see
cost?
so much.
Hmm.
Correct.
And at what cost? Right? You and I have talked. You and I have talked many times before about. Look, man, I love this job. You know, right? We've said this. This job. This is the best, worst job in the world. But at what cost? At what cost? Look at look at the people around us. Because the fact of the matter is, Mitch, guys like you and I, we're not the ones making the sacrifice, brother. It's not us. Walk in the other room and look at your wife and your kids.
Right.
They're the ones making the sacrifice, right? Can you look in the mirror? And I'm asking you this, Brian to Mitch. Can you get up from your desk right now and go look in the mirror and go, I'm the same man I was 5 years ago? And I'm not going to answer for you. Not a fucking chance.
Absolutely not. Like I'm
Not a
not.
chance.
I'm not.
Are
Yeah.
you the same man that your wife married? Nope.
No. No. She
Mm-mm.
deals with my episodes. She deals with the trauma, and that's all the shit that I packed on my back from this job.
That's right. That's the truth. And I don't want to be like, I don't want to sit here and dissuade anybody from doing the job or, bash the job. That's not my goal, right? But there's very real things that happen to us in this job. I as a field training officer, the first week I have recruits, man, that's all I talk to them about. Forget the driving fast, point guns at people and actually getting the bad guy and helping people. Put that aside for now. I'm not saying forget that, because that's the only reason I've ever wanted to do this job, and that's the God's honest truth. But there's a very real aspect of this job that I want every recruit coming into this career to know, and it's just what I just said. In 5 years, you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and you're not going to be the same person. It's not possible.
No, after the shit that we've seen, yeah, fuck
Yeah,
no.
bro. Right? Like, what do you have we all have that one call, right?
Oh yeah.
Right? And you, if you're willing, what's your one call?
My one call was suicide, obviously, death, destruction. Was working night shift. I want to say I was maybe 2 years into my career, 3 years, and get this call of a suicide. Dude shot himself in the face with a shotgun, and it was at a lumber mill. So I respond, clearing the lumber mill with the shield, go into the administrative office, and I see the dude sitting there. I see a bunch of blood on the wall in front of him. I see him sitting in his boss's chair. His boss's chair.
So he's making a.
Yeah. Yep. He had a fish finder sitting in front of him, and that was a gift that his boss gave him for his birthday. And I remember picking up pieces of his face in the next room with the medical examiner. Pieces of chin, pieces of cheek, pieces of face with his beard on it.
Right.
And just that visualization. I had to work through therapy to not feel emotional about it anymore. Now it's just a vivid memory. There's no emotion assigned to it.
Right.
But yeah, and I could name off 100 other fucking calls I've been to that
easily. Yeah. And that's a daily, right? We talk about traumas. So we have what's called acute traumas. And it's because we work, like for us, and I don't know about law enforcement, any other agencies in the country, but for us, we work 4 10-hour shifts. Well, I take that back. We're scheduled for 4 10-hour shifts. How long's it been since you've actually worked a 10-hour shift? And if not, you know what I mean? It's always more. But
yeah.
But that's 10 hours a day, every single day of bad shit, over and over and over. And again, I'm not complaining about it. We're just talking about a topic because there's going to be the naysayers out there. Well, that's what you signed up for. You're right. You're absolutely right. This is what we signed up for. And you know what, motherfucker? You know why we signed up for this? Because here's the reality. Get ready. Society lives in a bubble, and they should. They should live in a bubble. That's that bubble of protection. Because men and women who, quote, sign up to do the job, unquote, do that job so that they can live in that bubble. And we're good with it. That's the way it should be. But when you go decades of day in and day out of these acute traumas, it changes a person. It just does.
So here's a good segue. Do you think that folks like us that do this job, do you think we're God's warriors? I know you're pretty religious. We've talked about this in the past.
Well, I'm going to correct you right there.
Okay.
I brush my teeth religiously. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ as my Savior. That's just the truth, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
Do you think that there are only certain people that God can trust to do this job?
I think
because it feels like society is weak, and the shit that we see is just not normal.
Right. I would say that there are people that God has chosen to do this job. And there's also, God has absolutely chosen you and I to do this job, without a doubt in my mind. But as believers, and for the record, I am a cussing Christian, so don't anybody, I'm a hypocrite, because guess what? God's church is full of hypocrites, or there would be no such thing as a church. So we're talking about, God leads us to this job, and yeah, man, like me as a believer in Jesus as my Savior, absolutely, God led me to this job. However, God also leads people away from this job. God leads people away to and from everything, right? It's not just this job. It's God creates these paths for us in life. And are we willing to be open to seeing those paths? Because guys like you and I, man, we invest so much into this job, and the pay is good, the benefits are good, and what we call the golden handcuffs. And if God is leading us away from this job, are we listening? And I can tell you, Mitch, without a doubt, I am listening wholeheartedly to God in leading me away from this job. Full disclosure, I may not have a choice. The stuff that this agency is doing to me, on paper, it looks like they want to terminate me. I don't know that for sure, but it looks that way. But if our sheriff called us tomorrow after almost 16 years of service, if our sheriff called us tomorrow and said, Brian, I want you back on Tuesday, I would respectfully decline.
That's pretty powerful, yeah.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and who knows the next 6 months, who knows what it's going to be like for me, right?
I was just going to say the same. You're going through a season, right? We all go through seasons in life. I don't care if you're a cop, a plumber, an electrician, an iron worker. Traumas are traumas. We just got to be open to what God's showing us. Where's He leading us? And maybe for you, He leads you like, no, I'm not done with you in this. I have people that I need you to touch. In His ministry with the badge that you wear. Maybe He's not done with you in this ministry. But be open to, like you and I have talked about before, be open to maybe He is. You have to be open to where God wants to lead you, because He's never going to lead you in the wrong direction. Ever. Ever. It's not even possible.
Right.
So it's weird. While we were on a break, I went back to my Bible, in the book of James. It talks about, in James 1:1-5, it talks about trials and perseverance. And without trials, there is no perseverance. Without perseverance, we don't build character. Without character, we have no hope. Like those are four huge components just in life. And you apply that to what we do every single day. And the people that we deal with, and it's so easy to just get like bitter and jaded against, us against them. Man, it's not us against them. It's us collectively. Yeah, we might arrest somebody, but that person that we're dealing with that day, who's probably having one of the worst days of their lives, who are we to pass judgment on them? And that's
Yes,
heavy.
yeah, that is.
Who are we to pass judgment on them? I'm not God.
No, but you get some cops that will pass judgment, but then you get some cops that are human and
Hmm.
realize like this person's having a shitty day. You fucked up.
Yep.
We have a job to do, but I'm going to treat you with the utmost respect.
Yeah, and you and I are both guilty of passing judgment on people. We're human.
Sure.
We are. I can remember a time. I don't know if I've told you this story. I mean, you and I have talked so much. I don't know. I can remember a time I arrested a 19-year-old young man on a Len bias case. He was level, we'll say level one, right? And for those of you that don't know, that's a minimum 20 years federal. Like the feds get involved, right? Federal prison for 20 years, no questions asked. Now there's workarounds. Don't need to get into that. But here's this 19-year-old kid, and he's not a bad kid. He's scared out of his mind, and I'm lodging him. And this night, and I'm explaining the process to him. And it's funny because in my patrol car, I always have Christian music playing because for me that's just what. And I'm not a saint, so please don't take it this way. But I just that's the music that keeps me sane, right?
It
But
put me to sleep.
right, man, it's not hymnal music. I mean, it's like good music. But we got to the Sally Port, and man, we do our thing, open the back door, put our guns and our knives and all of our cool stuff away, and I open the door and I'm like, all right, man. After I having this whole conversation with him on the drive, I'm like, I'm going to be here with you through most of the process. And this kid looks up at me and said, would you pray with me? What am I going to tell him? No, because when we wear that uniform and that badge, right? No politics, no religion, none of that comes that you can't by policy, we'll say.
Sure.
And I said, man, absolutely, I'll pray with you. And I
That,
wish I've got this vivid picture in my mind of looking back through that, the sliding door that goes into the booking area.
mhm.
And I look back as I take this 19-year-old kid out of my car, and we're both on our knees in the Sally Port, and we're praying. And when we get done, I remember looking back at that little slit through the door. There's people looking like, what is happening right now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how does
Quite
that look
literally
on
on your knees, huh?
literally on our knees, bro? Yes,
That's the human aspect.
it is.
That's a lot of people don't see that.
They don't. Right? We're expected to be robots, right? The agency expects us to, and the public, let's be honest. A lot of the public expects us to just be robots. We could sit here and tell stories all day long. I remember doing a traffic stop. The guy ran a stop sign. And for me, doing traffic stop was a way to get my mind off of things. I'm not a ticket writer. I think last year I wrote 3 tickets. I'm just not that guy,
Yeah.
right?
I made a grown man cry because I didn't write him a ticket.
Right? See the
It's
effect you have
just,
on people?
yeah, absolutely.
It's our ministry. It's God's ministry. I remember I did this traffic stop, and I was pretty robotic, monotone. I wasn't rude. I'm never that way. I'm never disrespectful. And I Y2'd him. I gave him a warning. And the whole time he's screaming at me, like, don't you have better things to do? Go fight crime. Go find real crime. You're stopping me. I'm trying to get home from work. Or or wherever he was going. And I remember getting back to my car and I'm like, really? Like, if you only knew what I've just dealt with, but again, not his problem. And I went about my day, and he's retired now, but a former sergeant later that night, this was back in the great when I was working graveyard. So that driver called me, made a complaint, and I get pulled into the sergeant's office and talked about how I was rude. This is before body cams, monotone. And he's like, Brian, that's not like you. Like, what? I don't get complaints on you. What's going on? And all I said to him was, Sarge, pull up CAD and look at the call I was on not 15 minutes prior. And the call I was on for a couple of hours, but had just cleared and made this traffic stop to clear my mind, was a 15-year-old kid that had hung himself with an extension cord. We cut him down, and he lived, or he was living. And you walk away from that, like, I got kids. And we walk
Yeah,
away from that, and we're expected to just be all happy and smiles, right?
yeah. And that's one thing I learned through therapy is I can't. I had to disassociate my feelings, like the dead bodies that we see with 4-year-olds or 3-year-olds. You have to
Yeah.
disassociate that, but you sometimes just cannot. And it's hard. That's when you build that wall, and that's when that
Mm-hmm.
wall starts overflowing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how you cope or what some of your strategies are to cope with some of that trauma.
It, like for me, for as long as I can remember, it's always been fitness. But as far as because there's physiological aspects, there's things that take place in our body, physiologically speaking, with cortisol and dopamine, right? They counter each other. And physical fitness has been huge for me, but nothing will ever replace the grace and mercy of Jesus, my Savior, for me. And again, I'm not a saint. You know it.
Yeah,
You know it more than a lot of people do. But because of grace and mercy, and because that I've come to Christ on my knees so many times in my life. Like, look, man, the stuff that I'm going through now with work, with PTSD, it caught up to me. It caught up to me. My family left me. They don't want nothing to do with that. And I go back to, it's them that makes the sacrifice, not us. We're there because we want to be there. Our wives and our children, or I'll say our spouses and our kids, they're the ones that make the sacrifices for us to do what we do for a living. And like, I can tell you, my kids are grown now, but what I can say is, my son, for instance, 4 years of high school wrestling, I saw 1 1/4 wrestling meets. 1 1/4.
yeah,
That equates to like watching him wrestle 3 matches because the job came first, and it should never.
sure. And we call those sacrifices, but that's should not be the case.
Correct. Correct. And it's a double edged sword, right? I mean, the sacrifices have to be made in order for first responders to do their job, and families.
Sure,
Not
but
all fam.
we shouldn't subject our families to our own sacrifices.
No, I'm agreeing with you, but and I don't know how it was with you and your wife, but I know for me and my wife, like, I started this career at, like, again, I did a military career, and then I started the law enforcement career at 36 years old. So, and I had family members that were law enforcement, so I was fortunate that my wife and I could actually sit down and have some insight, like, okay, you do understand that this is shift work, and this is only seeing each other for literally a few hours a week for some time. So it wasn't something that I just chose to do without my wife's input by any means. So it was a sacrifice that we both chose. And even with those influences and input from other people, you well, you can even say it, right? We did had no clue what we were getting into.
Right.
We had no clue. Coping, man, if I had the answers, I'd never been a cop. You know,
Yeah.
if I had
So
the answer.
one thing that my wife keeps saying is, have you looked at finding other jobs? Have you looked
Huh?
at doing this? Have you looked at doing that? And it's like, sure, I can look at those jobs. But the fact that she never has ever said, I want you to leave law enforcement, made me feel like, okay, she doesn't want to put that burden on her.
Uh-huh.
I straight up asked her the other day, do you want me to leave law enforcement? I need you to tell me yes or no. She said yes.
Hmm.
I
Really?
I didn't blame her for taking on that burden. I was just happy to hear that she said that rather
So
than
she,
saying like recommending other jobs. She straight up said yes. I want you to leave law enforcement.
it's over.
Right,
It's over, brother.
but that's a new journey.
It
That's
is, man. And it's man, look at me. Man, I'm 52 years old. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I'm okay with it. Like I've told, and you're making me smile right now, dude. The fact that she said that, I'm smiling because for guys like you and I, when our wives tell us that, it makes it okay.
yeah.
It
It's not
makes it
it's,
okay.
it's not some macho thing that When I first started, yeah, being a cop was just fucking macho. It
Of
was
course.
it was running, gunning, fucking
Yeah.
pointing guns at people, and
So much
now
fun. So much fucking fun.
it's like, no, honey, you have a family. You need to provide for this family. We need you to be alive. Like, you put in your time, you put in the effort,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
she doesn't want to see me have any setbacks anymore.
Right. Because they're the ones making the sacrifice. I go back to that. Even in my military career, my wife was with me for the last portion of that. And I've known my wife since I was 15 years old. They are the ones that make we're doing that because that's what we want to do. That's what God has called me to do. And they're willing to make that sacrifice. And I've said from day one of this career, if my wife ever tells me that she's done with this career, there's no questions asked. No questions asked. And it makes me feel so warm inside because I know you, that your wife is telling you this because that it's giving you affirmation that it's time. It's
It is
time.
time. Yeah.
But right, the warrior in us is like, well, hold on a minute. If not me, then who? And
Yeah. Someone else
that's
has to be a
tough.
trauma sponge.
Yes,
I've been a trauma sponge for
a
the
long
last
time.
15 years.
Yeah,
And granted, it's caught up to me, but I keep pushing myself thinking, well, if I go through therapy, if I see a psychiatrist, if I see my doctor, then I will get better eventually. But just going to continue to subject myself to more trauma.
trauma. Yep. Yeah, right. Our tank is full, and that's okay. And that's the thing, right? Like the days of the past or yesteryear, or however you want to spin it, it was no. You just gotta keep pushing. You just gotta keep pushing. You just gotta keep pushing, and it's okay to be done. That doesn't mean we're pussies. That doesn't mean, man, I'm not the toughest guy in the world. I'm just not. But I know I'm hard to fucking kill. I can promise you that. I
Yeah.
can promise you that, right? And that's okay. We, you and I talked about this, I think, last week, going through my own therapy. Like what my therapist talks about is this. We talk about that hypervigilance cycle, right? That Dr. Gilmartin talks about. And my therapist refers to it as badassery because my therapist is this, 75-year-old meek, never, he plays pickleball for shit's sake. He's never played a combat sport, which is awesome. He's an amazing guy. So he refers to it as this badassery. And we for years have had this badassery at the forefront of our mind. And I know you touched earlier about your home being your safe zone. Well, for guys like us, it's the safer zone. It's never turned off. That we go to work, that, as my therapist says it, and again, we are not badasses, but as my therapist says it, that badassery is at the forefront of our mind the whole time. The hypervigilance, head on a swivel, pulling up to a lot of people don't even know this that are civilians. We pull up to a stoplight. We don't pull up even with the driver next to us, because the driver next to us could shoot us through the window, right?
Just before or just behind.
That's right. So we got the A pillar and the B pillar protecting us from bullets. Who thinks that way 10 hours a day, every day? Right? That's hypervigilance, and it weighs on you. We need to come to a point where we can put that skill set, metaphorically speaking, in our pocket so that it's there when we need it. But why can't I just be that guy that is approachable in the grocery store, that's not standing in the frozen food section with my right foot 6 or 8 inches behind an offset in what we call a combat stance at all times? Because when we stand like that, like my wife says, we'll be walking in Home Depot. She's like, really? Like, you scream cop right now. And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy anymore. I don't want to be seen as intimidating. I don't want to be seen as, and I'm not saying that I am to everybody, but through my own journey of trying to salvage my family and my marriage, it's the things that I'm being told by the ones that are closest to me. And I don't want to be seen as quote unquote powerful or intimidating, or I'll be honest, man, I want somebody to come up and give me a hug. I want somebody to shake my hand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but if you leave law enforcement, if you end up leaving law enforcement, do you see any setbacks from not being part of that community, or quote the thin blue line? Like I said last time, it's a bunch of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any setbacks?
Not one.
It's reassuring.
Not one. Not one setback, dude. Not one. I can't emphasize that enough. The setbacks that society would place on it would be what we refer to as the golden handcuffs, right? The fact that I'm a knuckle-dragging former Ranger making over $100,000 a year, have awesome benefits, mind you, all at the expense of the taxpayers, because I've never taken that lightly. I know who my boss is, and that's the people that pay their property taxes. So society might think it's a setback if I got to suddenly take a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year job. Okay. I'm warm, I'm fed, and I'm sheltered.
Yeah, it's one thing I've thought about too, is we work for the people, where our boss is hired by the people for the people.
That's right. That's right.
And we work for the people. I think a lot of people forget that too.
I'll even go as far as saying, I wouldn't even say they forget it. I think that there are, and this is not I keep saying this, I'm not bashing any individual, but I think that there are a certain percentage, we'll say, not that they forget it, they don't give a shit. They genuinely don't give a shit. I was actually talking, prior to you and I talking earlier tonight, I met a guy, like friend of a friend, over the phone kind of thing, right? One of my wife's best friends from years and years back, a roommate that she's living with is a cop in Utah. He's about my age. He's mid to late 40s. It's very interesting to talk to somebody in a different part of the country doing the job that we do and hearing all the same bullshit that you and I have talked about for years. The difference in his story was he absolutely has faith in his agency, and his agency has his back. And that shocked me. I was
Right.
floored. That shocked
Yeah.
me because I'm not used to that. But hearing the reason I talked to him and through her is because the two of them just came through. There's an organization in Utah that is strictly deals with first responders with PTSD. It's a PTSD treatment center. And he's been a cop for about 15 years, 14 years, I think he said, maybe 15. And the PTSD that he's dealing with and the similarities. And it's like, it's reassuring, but scary. It's reassuring to know that we're not alone. And for me, that's where that thin blue line is. And the thin blue line for me is not what we were taught years ago of that divider between sheep and sheepdogs. It's the similarities that we have with so many other people in this country, well, in this world, because of the awareness of trauma and PTSD. The shit that we fucking see, smell, taste, and feel for decades. That
Yeah.
is what the thin blue line is to me.
Yeah. Imagine fighting someone in a ditch in the pitch dark and you get paid for it. Like that's not what a normal person does.
It's not.
Like you're constantly worried about losing your life or losing a fight and
Yeah.
you're simply getting paid for it.
Right. Which, again, we want to be fully transparent. Sometimes that doesn't suck.
It can be a bit of a stress reliever.
Well, what I'm
It's
saying is, it's not. It and I'm not advocating hurting people because and it's the God's honest truth. I don't want to ever hurt people, but there's something satisfying about punching somebody square in the suck hole. You know what I mean? When it's
especially,
justified and they deserve it.
yeah, when they say they want to fight you and they start reaching in their waistband, game
Yeah,
on. Let's go.
game on.
Let's
Yeah,
start.
but when the fight's over, it's back to being a human because violence is ugly.
Yeah,
So
I
now it's
had
back to treating them with dignity and respect.
yeah, I had one sergeant ask me why I only punched someone in the face once, and
Right?
I said, "Well, because it worked. They were
Yeah.
done fighting. I punched them in the face once, and I achieved my goal, my objective, and I didn't
Stop
need
the
to."
threat.
Right,
Correct. Good. Yep. Yep.
but
There's also an aspect of that. Like we can sit around and laugh and please understand for anybody that chooses to listen to this is just the way twisted minds like us cope, right? We laugh about shit that people shouldn't laugh about. And I'm not condoning or enjoying violence. Bullshit. Violence is fun in a constructive manner, right? I come from a martial arts and a mixed martial arts background, like competitively. But there's also something about violence that takes a little bit away from us every time it happens. Even though it's a quote unquote bad guy, right? And you take him to jail because pick a heinous crime. But I have to always come back to, but I'm not their maker. And it still takes a little bit away from us every time we have to do something like that because that's another human being that is just going through, pick your trauma. God knows what. Right? Pick your trauma.
yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows why they are the way they are, but we are called upon to intervene in their lives at the absolute worst moments, and it's not easy for us. Guys and gals can high five and do all that shit they want afterwards because the adrenaline's going, right? The dopamine. But when the dust settles, it's like, fuck, that sucked. That fucking sucks. That
for sure.
sucks,
Yeah, for sure.
right? I just hurt another human being. And that sucks.
Yeah, but you want to be equal to every other human being, and God doesn't necessarily have those plans for those people. That's my opinion. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
there are evil people in this world.
There
And
absolutely is. Yeah, there absolutely is. You and I have seen true evil, true evil,
yep.
and I have no problem, cop or not. I don't give a shit if a Home Depot employee intervenes. If they're seeing true evil, and we have an opportunity, a chance, a calling to stop pure evil, you're dang right that's going to happen. You're dang right. And
Yeah.
I will step in that fire every single day, not knowing the outcome of it. Right? God, my faith is in God, and if I lose my life doing it, you know who it sucks. The people it sucks for if we die is not us. It's not us. It's the people we leave behind.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And that's not how I felt when I felt suicidal, though.
No.
I just thought, oh, fuck everyone, and I'm
Hmm.
dead. No one's gonna care. I'm not gonna care,
Hmm.
because I'm dead. But reflecting back on that is that's a hard that's the hard truth to it. Is we're being open and honest. That's how I felt. Like
Hmm.
PTSD is just there's so much behind it. I mean, that's why we've been talking for almost an hour now. Like,
Hmm.
bringing God into it is what helps.
Hmm.
Seeking help is what helps.
Hmm. Admitting,
Uh,
knowing,
yeah, yeah,
right? Knowing that there's something wrong. Knowing that there's something wrong. And
yeah.
you get to that emptiness. Um, I can tell you, and I have told you, on this year I've gone through my own fair share of shit, we'll say. I can tell you that on Friday, August 9th, 3 days after my wife left me, after 31 years together, and by the way, we are together,
Glad you made
God's
that point.
grace.
Yes, glad
Like,
you made
yeah.
that point.
What's that?
I'm glad you made that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And by God's grace, right? God is working in both of us, but and at the same time, my kids, my grandkids, nobody wants anything to do with me. And on August 9th, for me, it was all over. It was all over. I had nothing to live for, and as I laid in bed at 7:13 a.m. and thought, I have nothing left. I'm on administrative leave, being accused of something I absolutely did not do, and I'll say it straight, nothing physical. I'm being accused of deception during an interview, and it absolutely did not happen. And I'm thinking, I don't have a career. The most important thing to me in my entire life has always been my family, and I don't have that anymore. So why am I here? And I've got a Glock 26 sitting behind me where it always sits, in a holster, clipped to my headboard. I've never touched it, but I visually thought it would be so quick if I just suck started the barrel of that gun and I'm done. And it was
Yeah,
a fleeting, and it was a like, and I remember talking to you about this probably not
yeah,
long after, and it was a fleeting thought, and it was like, well, hold on a minute. Now, what I'm going to do is force some other cop in the city that I live in to deal with my dead body. the shit that I'm traumatized from. And I immediately rolled out of bed and fell to my knees and pled with God.
Yeah,
And
I've asked you to pray. I've asked you to pray for me. You know that,
all the time I do. Yeah,
right?
man. Yeah,
There have been times where I found myself pacing back and forth in front of my safe. It's part of the reason I don't have guns right now. You know,
yeah, yeah.
uh, those feelings are real, and we don't need to. We can validate each other, but we don't need to sugarcoat what we're going through. Like,
Never.
we are comfortable with death,
Yes. Even my own.
right? So, I mean, that's why we seek help. That's why, you've grown closer with God. That's why I reach out to support groups.
Yep. If there's anything like this, this fledgling little podcast, whatever, if it reaches one person, even somebody that we just work with, and you know who you are, there's so much more. There's so much more to life than what we do for a living. And I think as first responders, cops, firefighters, paramedics, we put so much stock. Well, society, let's be honest, society as a whole. What's the first? I'll ask you this, Mitch, and you and I have talked about this, right? You're hanging out at a barbecue with buddies or a party. How do your friends introduce you,
As a cop, your cop
right?
friend.
Like, what the
Oh, this
fuck?
is Mitch. He's a cop.
Right, right? Like, really? First of all, fuck you, because I don't know how many felons are at this place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, you got tattoos on your neck, dude? Fuck out of
Right,
here.
right. What stopped it in its tracks for me, my best friend of decades did that when I first became a cop, and I get it because he was very, very proud of me. But I pulled him aside. I said, "Hey, dude, when I introduce you to people, do I say, 'Hey, this is my buddy,' and I'm not going to say his name, A. I'll say his name is A. 'Hey, this is my buddy A. He's a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician.' Do I say
No.
that to people?"
No.
He's like, "Well, no, that would sound fucking stupid." I go, "Uh-huh. It does, doesn't it?" And he's like, "Got it." You know what I mean? Because that's
Yeah.
not, we get wrapped up in this job defining us, defining in who we are, and it's not. Like you, Mitch, you're a son, you're a father, you're a husband.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what defines you. Our legacy is not, it shouldn't be. I've always said forever, like, I don't want when I die and I have some funeral, memorial, or like, I don't give a shit what they do because I'm going to be dead. I'm going to be with Jesus. The last thing I want is everybody getting up there and going, "Man, that Brian, she was a good cop."
Yeah, no, that's not what defines us. Fuck that.
No, no. And
Yeah,
guess
no,
what?
I want to be known as a good husband, good father.
Huh? Exactly. And guess what? And I'm working very, very hard to repair this. But because of the acute traumas and the investment, the overinvestment that I've had for decades in this job, my oldest, that's all he can say. That's my dad. He's a really good cop. That's not okay.
No, that makes it hard.
It's not okay. And that's on me. That's on me.
Sure, but
And I,
that's also why you push me into, leaving this career. I did 8 years, 8.5 years. And you're
yeah,
pushing me like you have two young kids. You need to be there for them.
need to be there for your kids, man.
And I appreciate what you say, I do, but
I know you do.
just getting over
Hard.
the fear of going through that.
It
And
is.
I have to heal first.
You do. You absolutely do. You and me both, man. You and I are, I'm twice as long in the career, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on, like, mentoring you. And like, that doesn't mean that I'm better. You know what I mean? That you and I are so much the same. Like we're going through a season together, and we're like vastly different in our tenure in this career, but we're also the same. And it's you have an opportunity to change the lives of your two children right now. Well, I would say in the next 6 months. You have an opportunity. God is giving you an opportunity to change the lives of your children. He is giving you an opportunity to potentially change the outcome of your family life. And it's up to you to take it or don't.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
And
for
that's
sure.
hard. That's hard. That's not easy.
No, I agree. And you teach me a lot. Uh, it's
You
definitely
teach me
been,
too, though. But but you teach me, right? Just because I'm the old guy in this, I still get to learn. I get to learn from. We're going to use first names. I get to learn from Brandon. I get to learn from Brandon's clinician, who I adore. If you're listening, holler, love you. Uh, I get to learn from Matt.
yeah,
I get to learn from Dustin. Younger men, guys like Matt, younger than me, but he's also got 20 years in as a SWAT operator. He's been in an OIS. Um, you want to talk about somebody that's chewed some dirt, bro? Dustin, bro, chewed some dirt,
yeah,
and if we can learn from those people around us, our peers. Even interestingly enough, there's two others that I'm going to mention. I'll say Corey, female, and Stephanie, massive inspiration to me, and I don't think they know it. They're younger,
really.
massive inspiration.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. These are individuals. Everybody that I've mentioned, Craig, we know him as Loud.
Yeah.
Craig, right? I just had a recruit, BJ, is one. I mean, I've had so many recruits, but Amanda, everybody I'm mentioning are people that reach out to me on a regular basis as me as their FTO, me as the old guy, and they're concerned and think about me. I had a recruit that I only had for I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks before he left to go to academy, and then I had some health issues, and then was out for months, and then this happens, and he sought people out to get my phone number and sent me a text message just last night. And he's like, "Man, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you." Like, that's massive,
Yeah. No kidding.
right? And how do you, like, when your email went out, how many people you told me you're like, "Fuck, my phone is blowing up."
Yeah, I
Can you
didn't
even,
leave it alone. I had to put it aside.
right? But how awesome
But
is
here's the
that?
thing. Some of that was fake, right? Some of that
Yeah,
was prodding for information. I
yeah,
read through the bullshit, but I tried to remember that most of it was legitimate care.
yeah, yeah. But you have people. There are some people. You, for instance, when my email went out months and months ago, you were on the spot with me. Are you okay? Yep, on the spot, right? We have people in our lives, so we take away from this job because let's face it, that's all this is a job, an honorable one, but it's a job. But coming through the other end of this, look what you take away from it. Look at these people. Look at this bond that you've created, right? It's It's no different than when I was in the military and you go through things with other soldiers or other, pick your branch, airmen, Marines, whatever, right? You create that bond. And that bond, man, that bond it doesn't go away.
Yeah, why else do you think I call you dad?
I, because I'm old.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I still kick you in the chin from a
Yep.
standing. I mean, I might have to stretch a little bit, but
I can outdrive you though.
you think so?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm not going to say I know so, but I think so.
Not willing to place a wager on it. We'll see. So let me ask you this. What are you asked me earlier, what are you doing to cope?
Let's see. I'm what 3, 4 days into my leave. I like to talk to people. I like to use my
Hmm.
resources. Uh, People that go through similar situations, just like yourself, just being able to talk. Uh, like I said, it's very early on into my situation, and it's
Hmm.
not punitive. It's more of a, hey, we're here to help you. You need to focus on yourself. So more therapy, it means more psychiatry appointments, it just means more doctor's appointments, like all of these things, but I truly can't answer that right now.
Good. You
Um,
shouldn't.
but
You
that's why I
shouldn't be
lean
able
on
to.
people like you, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and like we're not always going to have the answers, but I think you can answer it, and I think you did, Mitch. And it's just talking about it, being being open about it. You find yourself again, even doing this, knowing full well that this is probably going to get sent out to coworkers like, hey man, you should listen to this. But which, for the record, I said in the beginning, I'm an open book. I don't care what coworker listens to this. Absolutely listen to it. This is just my truth. It's your truth. After the fact that you're talking is massive because how many people do we work with won't even talk about it?
Yeah, they're scared.
Hmm. Yeah, because there's a stigma. There's a stigma. I'm weak. If I've got this issue, I'm weak. I'm a pussy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But no, we need to be talking about this.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so I think I'm the first one at the agency that's ever been accepted for a workers' comp claim for PTSD.
I think you're right. I know you're the first just in my time there, which means you probably have to be a first because this wasn't even an awareness thing until recent years.
Right. And we had that one coworker that was all pissed off and tried to file it. His got denied, but
I'm not
yeah.
even sure who you're referring to be honest with you, but
Mm, yeah.
well, we'll
Uh,
talk about that later.
but yeah,
Oh, got you. Never mind.
yes.
I remember.
Okay. There we
Westbrook.
go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yes.
I just, PTSD is a real thing and it sucks. And there are episodes where I find myself sitting on the kids' playground just crying like a little bitch
Hmm.
and not knowing where my emotions come from, but knowing where they stem from.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it
You know,
sucks. We just need to
there's
be open.
yeah, and I hate to use I refer to it as the T word, right? Triggers, because I think it's so overused, and quite honestly, I think PTSD is overused in today's world as well. Not taking away from those that have PTSD. Please don't take it that way. And I can tell you that I didn't know anything about what my triggers or lead ups were until a week ago. And I've been dealing with PTSD for a number of years, diagnosed as through therapy, through psychologists. but I didn't know it was just, it's so easy to label it because of the job we do. It's like, well, you're a cop, you have PTSD. I get that, but can we narrow it down to yeah, you're just a cop. It's just all these traumas. Okay. Well, for me, it's kind of interesting because I was watching, you ever watch the show SEAL Team or SEAL Team 6, I think it is.
Yeah.
So the thing I love about that show is it's got some, it's got all the cool military stuff in it. However, it is really, really focused on mental health. If you really watch the show, it's a focus on mental health. And there was a scene in there where the lead character has a teenage son that like gets a hockey injury and is, prescribed Percocet or something, and dad leaves to go get food or something like that, and comes back and son is overdosed. And I come to find out he like gets a hold of a friend to get some street drugs because the Percocet's not working, whatever. But it was all the overdose stuff. And I found myself sitting here in my living room watching this unfold, and I can smell everything. I can taste, because without smell we have no taste, and vice versa, right? Like I'm watching this on TV and it's Hollywood, but I'm there, and my hands and my arms are trembling, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is happening right now? And I had to sit back and like do the combat breathing and like relax, like what is happening right now? And it dawned on me like, holy shit, that is a trigger.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? Because everybody knows I'm a dope guy.
Yep.
I spent my career trying to put my arms around addicts, not put my hands on them to arrest them, but to put my arms around them, because I've never known an addict that wants to be an addict. And of course, along with that comes all the overdoses and the death. And for me, that was a trigger of seeing a kid going through this. We talked about that one call, and I'll be honest, I don't know that I can pinpoint one. There are some that stand out. When I was a reserve deputy, brand new, and I was riding with a deputy at the time who's now a sergeant, Danny. Him and I just talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and it was the second time in my entire career I ever worked the West End, because you guys are fucking crazy for working the West End.
West End is the best end.
Man, yeah, fucking crazy. But we get this call that there's a family out in Timber. They got property right by the cabin, and they're out there cutting wood because it's being fell or something like that. And there's like a whole family, grandpa, their kids, like cousins. There's 15 people there. 911 call comes in because there's a double axle flatbed trailer on the back of this truck that they're loading logs onto. And I don't mean cut rounds, I mean logs, massive fir trees. And it's loaded, and it's getting to be the end of the day, and it's time to just kind of pack it up, and they're going to head back to the cabin. Well, Grandpa jumps in the driver's seat, and it's time to move the truck. He's got to move the truck forward for whatever reason. And his 18-month-old grandson, unbeknownst to anybody, because do you got him? 18-month-old grandson had pulled himself up onto the fender well of this trailer. Grandpa didn't know it. Nobody knew it. Grandpa pulled forward and killed his own grandson.
Dude.
And when I say killed, when Danny and I got there, we're the first people there. And, man, I'm a reserve deputy at this time. And when Danny and I got there, here's this baby, 18 months old. And this child's head looks like a pancake.
Yeah, it just popped. I could just imagine that.
Yep.
shit that I seen, I can just imagine.
And that was
Yeah.
my introduction to this career, and I still chose to fucking do it. So
Yeah.
what's
Welcome.
that say about me?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
This job is
Like,
fucked. Welcome.
right?
Let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's keep doing this shit because you're a warrior, right? And again, pick a call. That's my one of my other call for me happened. I think it was just last year. And thank the good Lord above for people, and I'm going to say their name, their first name. Thank the good Lord above for Deputy Dustin and Sergeant Matt that recognized some shit was going on. We got a call of a GSW and not really kind of knowing the details. Like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, this is a gunshot. Like, what? Like, it was one of those confusing ones, right? Typically, you know a suicide call when you hear one, but this one was a little weird. And it was in the five, and I get there, and me and another deputy, Craig, not loud Craig, a different Craig.
Mm.
We get there, and man, there's this 14-year-old kid, and his brains are splattered everywhere, all over underneath this tree. 14 years old, with a
Yeah.
gun in his hand, and his dad. While we're there, trying to figure out like what the fuck is going on, and his dad shows up, and it's we obviously have to get the gun secure. And here's this dad who is laying over on his son, and the primal wail that's coming out of this man. I mean, primal. Laying over his son with blood and brain. And that is the shit that we have to deal with every single day.
And imagine trying to rip dad off of his son so you can do your job.
We didn't. And
I don't blame you for
again,
doing that. I don't
nope, we
blame
didn't.
that. Yes.
Nope. We absolutely like no way. The gun's safe. Who cares? Who cares?
He needed that.
Yeah, and I'm not talking for a few minutes. The sergeant that was there, first name of Matt, when he showed up, was all about it. Like, nope, let it happen. We put crime scene tape up around him. I got one of our blankets out of our car because it was a cold, rainy day, and I just covered him. I covered them both, and I will say this, and this is my one time I'm going to say fuck that agency, because probably 20 minutes into it, a lieutenant arrived on scene and literally walked up and said, "What the fuck is going on, and why is he in that crime scene?"
Yeah, why don't you be a fucking human for once?
And it was at that point where the sergeant and the deputy could see that I was already distraught and saw that I was about to rip that guy's fucking head off his shoulders, and came over to me and said, "Time to go," and pulled me away from the scene. And I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
But I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Right? That's the command. Because all they give a fuck about is the perception and by the book bullshit. So here this lieutenant shows up on this scene where this dad is laying on his 14-year-old with his brain splattered every way, and talking about what the fuck is going on. This is it's a crime scene. Why is he like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Burn in hell, you piece of shit, is the only thing I can think.
Yeah, that just comes back full circle to the being human.
Right?
And that's, most of us are human. All of us are human.
Right.
We just have a job to do.
We do. And it's a shitty one. It's an amazing one, but it's a shitty one.
Yeah. I think
right?
Yeah. Well, unless
That's
you
the
want
worst
to
job in the world.
unless you want to add to anything, I think we should save the rest for part two.
Yeah, man, I'm good with that. We can do this anytime you want. We can do a part two, a part three, a part 12. I don't give a shit. I got no place to be. I'm on administrative leave.
Same here.
And by the way, getting paid, thank you, because we didn't do anything wrong, so they can fuck off.
Correct. Yes. All
But
right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys listening. I know this was a pretty heavy topic, a lot of topics that we talked about. I appreciate Brian being here. Uh, I look forward to having you, Brian, next future episodes, or even as a
absolutely.
co-host. Honestly,
Yeah, man, I'm in.
uh, but yeah, today was emotional. There's a lot of shit we covered.
A lot, a lot, a lot. And I'm open. Like I said, if anybody has questions, if anybody, if we get to a point in this where people have questions or something, I'm an open book. I will. I don't know how else to say it. I'm an open book. I will answer,
Yeah,
and
no,
I will answer truthfully.
this podcast is like just no bullshit. We say how it is. We don't sugarcoat shit.
That's right.
I'm over that. I'm over doing
Yep.
that. Uh, as traumatic as it might be, if someone has a certain feeling about something we talk about, make sure to reach out to your support group. But
Yeah,
uh,
man. Yes.
we'll see you next time on Shield of Voices.